You know how sometimes someone just pops up and grabs everyone's attention? Like, remember Sister Jean during that Loyola Final Four run?
Oh, absolutely. She was suddenly everywhere.
Yeah. It was almost, I don't know, kind of like the Taylor Swift effect at Chiefs games recently. This unexpected figure everyone's talking about.
That's a surprise factor, isn't it? Someone
Yeah.
stepping out of, well, what you expect and
Hmm.
connecting. And with Sister Jean, it was this warmth and wisdom right in the middle of, you know, intense college hoops.
Exactly. And it got me thinking, what's her story beyond that moment? So that's our deep dive today. One of you actually listened to her memoir, Wake Up with Purpose, What I've Learned in My First 100 Years, on audiobook.
Ah, interesting.
Yeah, and shared some really fascinating bits. So our mission is to unpack some of the maybe surprising parts of her life. And believe me, it's way more than just basketball.
It's interesting you mentioned the audiobook, the listener noted. Their interest dipped a bit when it got really focused on basketball later on. Suggests that maybe those earlier parts of her life before the basketball fame really resonated.
Totally. Okay, so let's go back, way back. She was born in 1919. Just picture that world.
Wow.
1919.
Growing up in San Francisco, she actually saw the Golden Gate Bridge being built. Can you imagine?
Seeing something that huge, that iconic, under construction, that must have been something. Probably gave her a sense of, I don't know, possibility early on.
And she walked across it on opening day, 1937, with her mom. That's like touching history.
A real tangible connection. Yeah.
It really grounds her incredibly long life in these big historical moments.
Mm.
Okay, fast forward a bit. World War II, she's teaching in California,
Mhm.
and our listeners shared some really stark details about student life after Pearl Harbor. Kids wearing dog tags.
Dog tags, right?
And get this, they were told, take the exact same route to school every day. The idea was, well, if there was a bombing, they'd know where to look. Gosh, that's intense. It shows how, even far from the fighting,
Hmm.
the war just permeated daily life, even for children. Dog tags, specific routes, speaks to a level of anxiety we can barely imagine.
Right.
And, seeing that impact on her students must have shaped her, fostered empathy, that desire to provide stability. You see that later.
It really does put things in perspective. Okay, another huge shift. The Second Vatican Council, 60s.
Ah, yes, Vatican II. Big changes in the church.
One change was nuns didn't have to wear the full habit in public anymore. What was her take?
Well, the memoir suggests she was pretty pragmatic about it. Vatican II was this major event updating practices. She didn't personally mind the habit,
Uh-huh.
but she thought maybe not wearing it might make her seem, I don't know, less intimidating to students. Always thinking about connecting, it seems.
That makes sense. And there's this great little detail. Apparently, the sisters had a bit of a adjustment period buying regular clothes.
Oh,
They called themselves fashion misfits for a while.
Huh. That's so human, isn't it? I mean, imagine going from a set uniform for decades, like department stores. It highlights those everyday challenges that came with big changes.
Totally. Speaking of changes, the memoir covers the Mundelein College merger with Loyola University, 1991.
Right, a significant moment for Catholic higher ed in Chicago.
And this was personal for our listener. They were a Loyola student then, their mom worked at the credit union there, and an aunt went to Mundelein.
Oh, wow. So it really hit close to home.
Yeah, not just news headlines, but part of their family fabric.
It shows how these big institutional shifts ripple out,
Yeah,
affecting real people, communities. Mundelein was important. That merger changed things for a lot of folks.
definitely. Now, as we mentioned, the memoir does shift focus pretty heavily to Loyola basketball later on.
Mhm.
And our listener admitted, okay, this is where my interest kind of dipped, though they finished the audiobook. They even mentioned reading Pat Conroy's My Losing Season.
Another basketball book, sort of.
Right, but saying their interest there was more Conroy's writing, not the sport itself. It's interesting because one thing they noted was, yeah, the basketball's compelling, but those earlier life parts really grabbed them.
Well, it just shows different ways people connect with stories, right?
Yeah.
Could be the journey, the history, the writing, or, a love for the game itself.
Absolutely. But even within that basketball part, there's this really powerful section that stood out. Sister Jean talking about racial justice, and specifically the 1963 NCAA game, Loyola versus Mississippi State.
Ah, yes. That's crucial history. You remember the context, right?
Yeah.
Segregation was still very real.
Mm-hmm.
And in college sports, there was this awful, unwritten rule about limiting black players on the court.
Mm.
And the governor of Mississippi was actively trying to stop Mississippi State from playing integrated teams at all.
Just awful. But the Mississippi State team, the coach, they defied him. They showed up to play Loyola.
Yeah.
And Loyola's starting lineup that year, 4 black players. That's just powerful.
Hugely powerful. Even though Mississippi State lost that game, just being there, defying the governor, defying those racist norms, it was a massive moment for social justice in sports.
Yeah.
And Sister Jean, including that, really shows her awareness of the bigger picture,
Yeah.
the importance of that game beyond the score.
Which brings us kind of full circle to Sister Jean today. The book came out in 2023, covering her first 100 years. So she was 104
Incredible. Just incredible.
and still so involved
Yeah.
with students and, yeah, the basketball team.
It's amazing. Not just a mascot, right? She apparently writes scouting reports for the coaches.
No way.
Yeah. And weaves strategy into her pregame prayers with the team. That level of engagement at that age, it's inspiring. Maybe seeing the Golden Gate get built gave her that lifelong can-do spirit.
Could be. Her purpose, she says, comes from helping others. Gratitude for every day, faith, service, and yes, basketball, those are her pillars. And I love this. She admits she has some old-fashioned views, but also calls herself pretty hip.
That's great. That blend of acknowledging the past she lived through but staying engaged with the present, it makes her relatable.
Totally. We also learned she's a Chicago Bears fan.
A true Chicagoan, then.
Definitely. And she's thrown out the first pitch at a Cubs game, apparently for her 103rd and 104th birthdays at Wrigley.
Wow. Good arm, I bet. Interesting. The memoir maybe doesn't mention the White Sox, though.
Huh. Maybe next memoir. But those details, they paint a fuller picture, right? Beyond the chapel and the court, her connection to the city.
Exactly.
So overall, even with that slight dip during the basketball chapters for our listener, the impression of the memoir was really positive, left them wanting to know even more.
Sound like it.
So definitely recommend it if you're interested in, well, nuns' lives, faith, living with purpose, or, yeah, college basketball. Oh, and there was a Good Morning America bit suggesting she might be the oldest person ever to publish a book.
Quite a capstone to a remarkable life. It really sounds like a window into a whole century of history through one unique person's eyes.
For sure. So I guess the key takeaway for me from this dive into Sister Jean's story is just seeing how one life can weave through so much history, building landmarks, social change, all of it, and staying so vibrant. It shows how our personal lives connect with these huge shifts.
It really does. And that leads to a thought for you listening. Considering Sister Jean's long, impactful life, what other stories like hers are out there? Untold stories and communities from people who've seen just as much change.
Yeah.
And, how can we maybe do a better job of finding and learning from those perspectives?